Take your time.
You know, there's an old saying sometimes that I don't look like what I've been through. And I'm no exception. But one of the things that I will tell you, I do hold on to the fact that I don't. Because I love to surprise people when I tell them about my experiences in life. The first life-changing moment was actually when I was a young mother, to tell the truth. I was 21 years old, married, pregnant, and then it seems as though everything started going sideways. Why would you say that? Well, strange things happened to my body. I broke out in hives, and then it would go away and come back. I thought part of that might have been who I was married to at the time. You see, I was one of those good girls who married my very first love, because that's what we do. You know, it's better to marry than to burn. But that wasn't it. I became one of the few documented cases where a woman was allergic to pregnancy. Can you believe that? I actually was allergic to pregnancy. It was something about the hormones that kind of turned my body on itself. But that wasn't the worst of it. About 5.5 months into the pregnancy, I just started feeling very badly. And at that time, I was high risk because of high blood pressure. And at the time, I was like, oh, I think a fraction of the woman that I am now in terms of size, but I had hypertension. And so I had to go to the doctor periodically, but I really, really felt badly that time. So my then husband did what he usually did when I got sick. And he took me to my parents' home. And that was the best thing he could have done. Because the very next day, I was so sick that I couldn't raise my head off of the pillow. And I don't know how my parents heard me, but I said, you know, I'm sick. You really need to take me to the doctor. I said, I have to go now. Take me to the hospital. So when I get to the hospital, they really don't know what's going on. Because I had these little rolling veins. I had all of these needle marks. And of course, the first thing they thought is that probably I had taken drugs. So, you know, I try to use humor because, you know, we have to laugh sometimes instead of crying. And I said, no, you know, you think I'm a druggie? Of course not. You guys, you need to teach your guys how to draw blood properly. Well, fast forward a few hours and I get my diagnosis. I had an E. coli bacterial infection. Can you believe that? And it was only maybe about 4 years ago that I realized that people die from this. But I share this story with you just to tell you that's the story of my life. You know, I've always been a church girl. My mother, my father had great faith. And this was something that was instilled in me very early. And so here I am. I have no idea how sick I am. They put me in isolation, and I'm in the hospital for about 2 weeks. And of course, what they do is they treat me with antibiotics. So at the time, I had to have ampicillin through IV, that's penicillin, and I had gentamicin shots. I never will forget one night, the nurse came in and she wanted to check on the baby. And she couldn't hear a heartbeat. I knew what was going on because when the nurses do things over and over again and they scurry out of the room, that usually signals what? Trouble. So I wanted to go to sleep. I didn't have time for that. So what I did was patted my tummy and I said, girl, wake up. Because if you don't wake up and give them a heartbeat, both of us are going to be up all night. Now, no, I didn't know it was a girl, but I tell you what, I didn't want a boy, so it had to be a girl. And sure enough, by the time the nurse came in with her supervisor, they heard the heartbeat. And I said, I told you. She was just sleeping. And I said, thank you. Let's go on and go to sleep. So, of course, I tell you that, okay, here's my life. My life started. You know, it's almost things happen. I trust God. I get over it. And then guess what? I move on. So I've been blessed so many times. I've been able to do things that a lot of people haven't. And I have really had to have a hard talk with God from time and just repent, because I've forgotten things that most people have never had an opportunity to do. I was able to teach school for a while. I loved teaching. I don't like doing the same thing over and over again. So what I decided to do was to be an elementary school teacher. Why? Because I could teach more than one subject and I could do different things every day. I'll let you in on a little bit about me, but I'm also a very stubborn person. I want to have my way. And I knew that I wanted to teach third grade, and I wanted to teach the students that were just like me, my own people. Well, why third grade? Because I like pretty handwriting, and I wanted to be able to teach them that. Then I also knew that third grade was very pivotal. You know, that's when you teach the multiplication and division. And guess what? I didn't get an opportunity to get a job. So I went into corporate and I worked as a communications consultant for one of our, for the phone company. That's what we used to call it back then. Until such time I was able to become, guess what? You guessed it, a third grade teacher. Now let me tell you about that first class. I came in 2 weeks after school had started, and my co-workers, two dear sweet ladies, had gone through all the files, and they picked the ones that they wanted, and they gave me the ones they didn't want. So what did I end up with? I ended up with 29 students. 26 were boys. Remember, I like girls because I grew up in a house with brothers. But I had 26 boys and 3 girls. And when these auxiliary teachers pulled the students out for special programs, guess how many students I had in the classroom? 1, 2, 3. What? I didn't go to school and hold out and wait all this long length of time just to teach 3 students for a period of the time. But do you know, those co-workers told me, well, honey, be glad, you know. What? No, this is not how you make a difference. So those 26 students would go to special ed resource. Some would go to like the Title I special program resource. And then there were some of them that had been placed because they had already failed twice and they just kind of pushed them on. So this is what I had to deal with. So here I am thinking out of the box. What did I decide I wanted to do? I said, I've got to do something special for these children. I said, because this is not good enough for me. So I remember one student sitting and he has this posture and he just would not cooperate at all. And I said, okay, what's the matter? I don't see you raising your hand. You know, don't you know the answer? No, I can't. I said, why not? Do you know what he told me? He said, because I'm special ed. What? So I heard, I can't. So the following weekend, I made this big sign saying there is no such word as can't. And I put it right on the top of the blackboard. It was a blackboard back then. Okay, don't do the math. You don't need to know how old I am. But I put there's no such word as can't. And I said, if you say that word in this classroom, you are in trouble with me. So, we're kind of learning one another until eventually I made a deal with the resource teachers. I said, give me 2 weeks and let me hold them in this classroom, and then I'll send them back to you. They looked at me like, you must be out of your mind. Are you serious? I said, yeah, I do. Because I had a plan. And my plan was that I would get to know those students, and I would try to instill as much motivation, skills, knowledge, and strategies as I could, and then send them on their merry way. And after that 2 weeks, I will just tell you what happened. Those students, the majority of those students, with the exception of 2, transitioned out of those special programs. And that just made my heart leap, and I knew that I had made the right decision and I was doing the right thing. However, that was short-lived. And I was able then to be able to go and teach other teachers by working in corporate America, working to teach and train teachers and administrators on how to use instructional materials. And one of the things that I really loved about that was the opportunity to travel. And it's like, that's when I can hear it clearly. And God would just speak to me, and things would come because I would be so relaxed until finally, I never will forget that day. It was February 1st when I heard a voice say, look to the left. And when I did, I saw a car had left the pavement, hydroplaned, and was spiraling at me, just like a missile. Bam. And then I could also hear, just hold the steering wheel straight, put your foot on the brake, and hold it, just hold it as straight as you could. It wasn't until my husband and my brother went back to the scene of the accident to see that if I had just veered a few feet to the right, that there was a ravine I could have gone under and I would have been dead. But thank God I'm here. That whole experience was supernatural. It just took me to a different level, because even from hearing the voice telling me exactly what to do, and for me to be the woman that you see sitting right here. I don't look like what I went through. There are a lot of people, sure enough, that are in accidents, but the woman that you look at today had a bilateral C2 fracture, meaning it's just broke straight across. These are the ones that Christopher Reeve had that either paralyze you or it kills you. It's called the Hangman's fracture. The steering wheel was here. The airbag didn't deploy. And I said, oh, my foot is jammed. It wasn't jammed. My ankle was crushed. It was a trimalleolar fracture. My ankle is put together like Humpty Dumpty with screws and pins. And there was a point when the pain got to be so excruciating. And then at that point, out of my mouth, just flowed valleys of living water, and scriptures that I had read and memorized as a child just came out of my mouth. And then it's just, I could just feel a presence like hot caramel just come straight down my body, and as it did, all of the pain went away. Up until such time that I found a pain in my hip, to find out that I had what they call an acetabulum fracture. My hip socket was crushed where the bone jammed through it and it cracked my pelvis. So I was stabilized there in that small hospital until I was transferred to a trauma hospital in Houston, Texas, where I spent the next 28 days. being stabilized, having 11 hours worth of surgery, having 4 pints of blood replaced, and just learning how to sit up